Hi, welcome to Sky Notes. This week, Lillian and I look at the astrology for the week of July 12th to the 18th. This week's astrology has a serious case of the Hurkey Jerky. It's the stop-start, wait-and-see type energy that may just drive us mad. But there are some pretty magical moments too, so join us while we check our Sky Notes.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Sky Notes for the third week of July. Tracy and I are going to share our notes with you, aren't we, Tracy?
We sure are. It's an interesting day on July 12th, the Sunday. The moon is void for most of the day. But then after the void of course moon, we have a sun and Mercury Cazimi. Wow. That evening.
Let's take a step back. Cazimi is when they're exactly conjunct during a retrograde. Yes?
No, doesn't have to be during a retrograde. But the thing that's so cool about it is that there's like about a 2.5 hour window between the moon changing signs and going into its own sign of Cancer, and then Mercury meeting up with the heart of the sun. So the definition of Cazimi is like modern astrologers sometimes give it the entire degree that the sun is in, whereas traditional, it's 17 minutes either side. So I tend to stick with that myself just because it's, the tighter the better, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But it's this because when the planets get too close to the sun, they're considered combust. So they're not as effective.
Right.
So it's that moment of passing through the heart of the sun where they get this moment of light and elevation and clarity. And then they move back into being combust until they move away from the sun. And so, we get Mercury Cazimis quite often just because Mercury is always dancing just 30 degrees either side of the sun.
Right? But that piece where you get that clarity, I love that you singled that out because that is the relevance during a retrograde. In a retrograde, it's common to feel, and of course, we've got this Mercury retrograde all month. We're likely to feel confused, unable to speak. The common things are tech doesn't work. Communication can be garbled. And some of what I've heard that I really quite enjoy is we're speaking to ourselves. And so when we speak to ourselves and talk to somebody else, it's confusing. And so awareness really helps. And then often after the shadow ends for the Mercury goes direct, shadow ends, there's shoes that drop. So there's an illusion that there's things happening in secrecy or we cannot perceive them as well. Right. So that Cazimi becomes that much more important because you're in this really confusing moment and then this clarity comes and then you're dunked back into the confusion.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And by the time we get to the Cazimi, we've been in retrograde for a few weeks now at that point. Right. And so it almost feels like, okay, so you've been inner processing, you've had all these, there's been miscommunications. Maybe you're in an argument with somebody that hasn't been resolved yet. That Cazimi moment is the moment of, okay, that's what it was about. Because the sun is there to shine a light on what has come before. So it's a moment of perspective, in my opinion, because the retrogrades, we tend to lose any objectivity because we go within. So we're seeing everything from within ourselves. So that Cazimi moment is this like, okay, now I see what's going on. Yeah. So it's a pretty powerful way to open a week for sure. And with the moon that's ruling the sun and Mercury in its own sign, there's that extra potency, especially around if you've been processing, like we keep talking about nostalgia, right? If you're processing that past stuff, there's the purity of having the moon in Cancer ruling those planets, right? There's this clarity and purity with that combination. So it's quite beautiful. Yeah, I don't get that excited about Cazimis, but this is kind of a nice setup.
Yeah, I imagine, like many things in astrology, trying to describe a moment of perfection inside of moments of not gets a little convoluted.
Right. And, it's funny because you brought up I don't know if it was the last episode or the episode before, but you had mentioned that idea, I think it was in the beginning of the month, how inspiration and ideas spread.
Yes.
Right. I wonder, because we're never going to know this, it can only really be a
Right.
theory, that the birth of that thing happens at a Cazimi,
Oof. I love that.
right? It gets birthed
Mm.
into the world as a granule of idea for those of us who are meant to pick it up, to pick it up.
Yeah.
It's possible.
I just love that. Well, I mean, I think what you're alluding to is something that I love to treasure and think about, which is the mysteries, the spirit of the world, the godlike energy that we experience, the light that illuminates everything is so in love with us that it's looking for any way to communicate with us successfully, how to navigate this magical, fragile, and confusing moment that we get to live through, and that shows up for a million people at once or seven or one, but usually more than one. And I
Right.
love that idea of creativity.
And the other, as you were talking, and as soon as you said God moment, the thing that sprung into my brain was the symbol of the sun being the circle with the spark of life in the center. And so it's almost like the planets, when they go Cazimi, and we have a big one coming at the end of the month, pass through that spark of life of the sun. And so
Beautiful.
it's almost like a reignition, right? And a reorientation to the most
Beautiful.
positive aspects of the sun.
I like it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And then we move into the 13th. So what do you have noted for the 13th?
The inconjuncts with Venus,
Right.
like, holy cow. So inconjuncts are 150 degrees. The glyph looks like a tabletop. The idea is you can't resolve it. They're those kind of differences where somebody doesn't like sushi and you love sushi. And so you
Right.
can't really do anything about it. And so are you going to be okay with that? Or is it a problem? And it's not just coming from one place, it's Neptune and Pluto. So it's
Well, it's
baffling.
making a yod is what it's doing.
Oh,
So
speak about the yod, because I don't have any, so I'm not sure.
no.
Like all I've heard is like, bam, it tells you when you do something wrong immediately. So the inclination is to do it right.
So a yod happens when you have an opening quincunx and a closing quincunx happening at the same
Nice.
time, right? So Venus is down at the point of the other two, which are sextile each other. And then at the same time, though, Venus is square Uranus on that day. So that is quite a powerful setup between Venus, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So that's a very, like, to me, when you talk about the adjustment piece, if we're
Yes.
looking at Venus in Virgo, there's something about making adjustments around our values, right? And in Virgo, we're really able to dig down into the nitty gritty of what we value and what's important to us, and maybe areas that we'd like to refine. And the square to Uranus likely will produce sudden ideas or conflicts that highlight what we want to adjust. Yeah.
100%. I'm kind of, the artistry of it really comes together. So the first thing I want to say is a quincunx and an inconjunct are the same thing. It's 150 degrees. No, I'm crazy out of my mind.
Well, okay. So you're not wrong, but an
But
inconjunct can also mean 30 degrees away,
wow. So
right?
let's use quincunx.
So that's why I tend to stick to the quincunx, just because that only has one meaning.
I like that.
So, but you're not wrong.
Well, and I wanted to illustrate that for the folks who are listening because we're using different terminology. So we'll use quincunx going forward. I feel like that's a good thing. The yod piece creates enormous tension, right? Enormous. I love that you said opening and closing because we're talking about degrees around a circle. And so you've got the energy rushing in and the energy rushing out, right? And then you've got this tension between the two actors, and it's all coming down onto that Venus. And in addition to that, you've got that square coming from wild ass Uranus, probably not even done complaining from the Neptune in weeks prior. And so still a little bit like, well, I guess, no, that was the Taurus node, forgive me. The Uranus in the Gemini versus Virgo, you're talking about two different qualities of Mercury, both ruled by Mercury, one is discriminating, and one is exploratory, needs 1,000 pieces of information, right? So there's a natural issue there too. So to me, I just see, I like adjustment because, wow, Virgo is the one, right? I think a lot about this, and I'm so curious, and I'll know later if it works out, but I think about the polarity of Virgo and Pisces as both being too much information. And I kind of described it too before as the Robert Downey Jr. scene from one of the Marvel films where he's playing Iron Man, where he sweeps in this computer and he starts working on the computer that's in the air and it's just a visual. And to me, that's Virgo, right? It's the amount of information, but you're functioning with it. And with Pisces, there's no need. You're so tuned into it. You can just kind of see it or be part of it or experience it. And so there isn't this agency like there is with the Virgo, with the discrimination. So, wow, what a tremendous opportunity to see a path, a navigation path for what you want.
But only if you can get past the pressure of the aspects, because there's so much pressure being put on Venus that the inclination might be to just ignore or run or go the other direction.
Do whatever someone else wants. Worst idea ever.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. So that, wherever somebody has Venus, or whichever houses Venus rules, or whichever one it's transiting, there's going to be a lot of pressure put on that part of your chart to make changes. So make sure they actually need changing, right? Because to me, when you get that kind of pressure, that can be change for the sake of change, just to do something.
It's so interesting. So this goes back, we've talked about this through the month of July, to that cadence notion, and one shoe dropping and another shoe dropping, or a process. So just because you get a very clear indication of what it is you want doesn't mean it's accessible. You write down, you capture what you got. You don't add a story to it. You don't do anything to it, and then wait, because more information is coming. Right. But it may not necessarily be available right away.
Right. Or it might not make sense right away, because with that square from Uranus, I feel like a dump of information that you don't even know what to do with yet.
So could be not yours.
Right. Just hold on to it, because it will make sense. It's just not meant to make sense to you. You got it with the Mercury retrograde for processing.
Oh, it's tough.
You got to take it in. You got to analyze it. You got to mull it around, right?
And it's tough because in Cancer, it will feel right to go, mine, finally, mine. And it's all not yours, or it's not good for you, or it's not actually what you wanted.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to say, if the conflict is not yours, stay out of it. If the problem is not yours,
there are other things to focus on. The third quarter moon phase says, take your success apart and make an inventory. There's plenty of other stuff to do.
Yeah, 100%. But again, with that much pressure on Venus, sometimes the pull is to worry about other people's business, right?
So interesting.
Yeah. So, don't do that. It may alleviate the pressure for the moment, but it might bite you in the bum later. Is it third quarter?
I apologize. Balsamic, which is not the third quarter, you're in the dumping ground.
Yeah, you're cleaning shit out, right?
Yeah. So if you're in the shit house and you think you found a diamond, take a moment, take a beat.
Right.
And if you're trying to clean other people's bathrooms, don't.
No. Well, and now we move into, this is a fascinating new moon that we have happening the next day on the 14th. Really, really interesting. And it's interesting just because of the way the planets are lined up right now. So I've pulled the chart.
Thank you.
I'm going to show everybody. So this is in Ottawa. So this is what it would look like close to where you are. Mm-hmm. So I love that sun moon right on the ascendant there. Beautiful. But again, in the 12th. So you don't have all the information yet.
But you
right?
can see something, so it could be confusing.
You can. And what's even more confusing is that the moment the moon moves away from the sun, it's void.
Right.
Like, so there's nothing that can be initiated.
We were talking about that at the beginning of the month.
Yes, because it's happening at 21 degrees of Cancer, and everything is so early. So the moon has absolutely nothing to aspect for another 9 degrees. So yeah, so it's really kind of an interesting, it plays right into that exact same theme of stop, start, stop, start, stop, start, feeling delayed, feeling held back, feeling like you can't move forward smoothly. And we see this very clearly in this chart for sure.
Interesting. And that processing piece, right?
Yeah, and I feel like with having the so that's Fortuna or the lot of fortune, and
Yeah.
it's a point that's calculated with the ascendant, the sun, and the moon. And it changes whether it's a day chart or a night chart. And so having the way this is set up with 23 degrees on the ascendant, 23 degrees Fortuna, and the sun and moon can see it. But as soon as the moon moves, you can't have it.
That's
Nothing you can do about it. This feels like such a frustrating energy in this new moon chart. And also, like Venus has pulled away from its aspects from that Yod, from the Uranus. So, any feeling like you want to kind of get past the pressure that got built during that configuration, really all you can do is sort of rest
Wow.
and take inventory of what you want to do next and what might need to be cleaned up after the Venus pressure. But this all sort of feels like people don't quite know where to put their attention, right?
Yeah.
And because the energy is uncomfortable, it just feels frustrating to me.
Yeah.
If people aren't aware, and if they're not, again, like we said, if you're not grounded and you're not feeling centered, you don't stop to do that. It can be a bit frenzied if somebody sort of lets themselves get pulled into it.
Yeah.
The other thing that's building in this chart that becomes very important as this month goes on is that Jupiter opposing Pluto.
Yeah.
So they're still not within the degree yet, but there's a bit of a foreshadowing with the Jupiter and Leo opposing Pluto in Aquarius. What are your thoughts? We're going to get more into this, but what are your initial thoughts on that aspect?
Well, I tend to, I know I've said it before, see Pluto as our messages from spirit, or light. So they're about how we can connect in the deepest way. And then the other planets, especially the collective or personal, or what do they call it? Yeah, group or personal, which Jupiter is one of the collective planets, I would say, talks about how we come up with ideas using our brains rather than the full complement of intelligence of our body and all the people reporting upward and clearly hearing back what we're saying. And so this Jupiter and Leo, I'm assuming it's going to come in just rollicking, just ignoring all of the stuff that it kicked up in Cancer, which, again, beautiful stuff, but a lot of stuff. And it's just going to go for bear in Leo and just go, go, go. And the Pluto is just going to knock it right off its heels and show where the deficiencies are and where we're not thinking about the common good and where things are not working out for the best. So It's an interesting dynamic to see coming.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really feels intense and much more so just because of where we are in history and the events that have led up to this, that Jupiter and Leo, that giant, the potential for giant ego, for giant, wanting to put an MMA thing at the White House is so Jupiter and Leo, yeah. But an opposition, one of the beauty of an opposition by transit, even natally, is that objectivity, that shining the light, being able to see clearly what that exaggerated sense of entitlement and ego and all the stuff that can be wrapped up in Jupiter and Leo, how it's affecting the collective, right?
Right. And moreover, how to make a balance with the two.
Absolutely. How to make both of them happy. Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I think that the Leo energy wants to include everyone.
Well,
I think,
Leo
right?
at its core is extremely generous, as
Yes.
is Jupiter. So the
Yes.
beauty of Jupiter and Leo is this like a generosity that knows no bounds,
That's right.
So the Jupiter and Leo is beautiful. It's
Right.
absolutely wonderful. We're just in such a weird time. And the sun, here it's not in Leo yet. But once the sun is in Leo,
We
it's
are.
yeah, it's gonna be interesting for sure. Because now you have that powerful sun in its own sign. So it'll just be interesting to see how that
Mhm.
plays out. And it's coming soon.
Yeah.
We're starting to feel this Jupiter Pluto thing line up.
So I would say a tension between how we give and how we receive. I would say fundamentally there'll be some, I didn't get this, I did get that. That's not fair. All of those kind of,
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the lesson in it and where it can be really helpful is, when is it supposed to be about you,
Yes.
right? When is it supposed to be about the collective? And let's
Yes.
figure that out, right?
Yes. Very helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to mention too, because we were talking about that Venus and all of the pressure from that aspect.
Mhm.
In mundane astrology, Venus is women,
Yeah.
right? And Virgo being a health sign. I'm curious to see what comes out of that narrative.
Well, and Virgo is female, right?
Mhm.
And it's not
Mhm.
your average female. This
Yeah.
is the female who owns herself
Yeah.
and who leads herself, who is not ever a spinster because
No.
she is her own being. And so there is that. And I
Yeah.
do see a lot of this weird, just horrible energy towards women, really dumb, selfish, dumb stuff. And another cool thing that could happen is women find their own way out of these smallnesses that can trap them, that are virtually everywhere.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I bring it up only because I don't feel that it's a separate story from what we're seeing
No,
with this Jupiter Pluto
it's
opposition.
yeah, it's in there. It's in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It doesn't, but it might not feel related at first.
right.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Venus, I mean, I know for me it's underscoring the whole year, but boy, has she been popping up in interesting ways all year long.
Oh, for
So
sure.
as much as Mercury and water signs is kind of dictating how we're perceiving things, Venus is really kicking up stuff under the surface. So,
Absolutely. And there's always an intensity to Venus in the years that she goes retrograde, and she'll be retrograde this year. So
yeah.
there is and of course when she's going retrograde, she's getting closer and closer to the sun. So and to us. So that makes perfect sense, right?
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I totally agree. She is absolutely underscoring. And then the lunar energy, it's wild because you would think that it would have been, and it was, more potent with Jupiter and Cancer. But with this year being so waterlogged,
Yeah.
there is the lunar energy is it's almost like we get to use whatever Jupiter and Cancer brought now.
Yes. Yeah.
So
So
there's this really magic about the moon.
you said waterlogged, but I think you mean it's a drought now.
Oh, I meant more like with Mercury doing its
Yes.
retrogrades
Perfect.
in water.
You are correct. That is
Yeah,
water.
that's what I meant by waterlogged. Yeah.
I love
Yeah. And
that.
it's actually more about the lack of earth, right?
Yes.
Than it is about being waterlogged. And I shouldn't have confused those two things.
Well, no, I love all that you said. I just wanted to make sure I understood it clearly
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
every time I think about that volume of water, I think about how hard it is to keep it clean
Mm,
and how
yeah.
you need to keep it moving and you need to keep it filtered. And if those
Right.
things aren't happening, you need to wait until it goes away.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. Oh, so that is yeah, we've got a void of course moon all day on the day of the new moon. And the new moon happens in the middle of the night. We'll be sleeping.
Wild.
So
Yeah.
it doesn't actually become not void until it moves into Leo in the early evening. It's kind of neat.
Yeah. So
And then the rest of the week is much more about the outer planets,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Now, I kind of feel like the aspects that are coming for the rest of the week, these have been perfecting now for weeks. You know, the Uranus sextile Neptune on the Wednesday is the next aspect. But that's been in play now for weeks.
Right.
And so we just sort of get this culmination. So anything that was building around the Uranus and the Neptune, we get to see it open up on the 15th. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's going to be with Uranus and Gemini and Neptune and Aries. That's going to have something to do with communication and the internet and maybe fashion, maybe drugs, maybe music.
Glamour, stories.
Yeah.
So I like thinking of these as we need story right now because there's so little that's literal or depicted in a way that's going to be sustainable. So we need to know what people are dreaming up, right?
Right.
Kind of love languages. So I love that for the Neptune sextile Uranus.
Yeah, there's a really that's such a creative combination.
Yeah.
And that I can almost see it like if for somebody this kind of idea is percolating, but it's not getting crystallized, or you think it's crystallized, and oh, no, that's not quite it. When this perfects, I feel like all the pieces come together, and it's like, oh, that's the idea, that's the whole thing. So that's kind of nice because that pressure has been building for a hot minute, and the moon is going to come in Leo and come in an aspect that sextile.
Exactly. That's cool.
Yeah, so we finally have a triggering of a potentially very beautiful aspect on the 15th in the middle of the afternoon. And so this is definitely a stop-start week because we literally have a void, of course, every second day. Because it's void on the 14th, and then again on the 16th. It's void until supper time here. Yeah, absolutely. Crazy. Yeah, it's a lot.
So plan your lunches, plan your dinners. This is a perfect time to socialize. Do not have an agenda, or if you have an agenda, let go of the outcome. It's a great summer week, but it's also inconsequential in the end.
Yeah. And you know, if it's one of the void of course times that we've identified, and you're just going to try to push through and keep getting the thing done, but you're feeling resistant, don't push through. That's the indication that it's just not gonna, I've had those days where it's like, but I just have to get this thing done. And by the end of the day, I've worked my ass off and gotten zero actually accomplished because of all the things that got in the way, right? But like I said, I've had some incredibly productive void of course months, but it's when I clean stuff up that needs to get finished and taken down. So yeah. And then Friday is lovely. I'm just trying to figure out the moon. Yeah, so the moon is not actually going to activate that particular combination of Uranus and Gemini trine Pluto in Aquarius. And so that's just lovely energy, but event-wise, the moon isn't coming in to trigger it. But again, there's still going to be a resolution around whatever's been building for people with that over time and understanding what the energy's been trying to say.
I like that.
Right? Like which is not what we normally see with a new moon week.
Right.
So that's what the energy feels really odd.
I love that. I love that.
So strange. What were you going to say? I'm sorry, I cut you off there.
No, I just want to go back to what you were saying, because the reason why you're saying that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is because we get the resonance from the new moon. And because the new moon goes into void of course right away, it doesn't matter every time it comes out of void of course. It's every other day. So that's just an unusual vibe for the week. And it's one that says, perfect week for practice, terrible week for performance.
Yes. Well, and the kind of deflating piece of it is that that's the moon's only new moon in its own sign, usually.
Right.
That is literally the only new moon in Cancer.
And that's something.
Yeah. Yes. So that's the reason why it's kind of like, you look forward to, if you're working with the moon, it's like that's an important activation time. So there's a delay to it just because until the void is passed, right? Plan during the void, right?
Right.
To come up with the intentions you might want to set, but wait until the moon is no longer void to actually set them.
So smart. So maybe wait till another week, just because the likelihood of the vibe being carried over from the new moon is significant this week.
Well, even so, the new moon is on the Tuesday, the 14th. So even if you wait till the moon moves into Leo that day, right? You're still within that same new moon window, but because it is like there's an annual sort of feel to it because it only happens once a year. You're right. You're probably going to understand it more about a week later.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
for sure.
my thinking.
Yeah. Because you're going to need to rely on that crescent and first quarter moons a little bit more to see what took. Yeah, that makes sense. I like it.
Exactly what grew. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. So overall, I think it is it's an interesting week. I look at this and I feel like this feels a bit frustrating to me. You know,
There's that opportunity on Wednesday to be creative.
Yeah.
In the evening.
Yeah, exactly. Or clean up an old creative project.
Clean up everything. Do what you want around cleaning. You've got the go ahead to throw anything away. Do whatever you need to clear. You know, obviously follow your internal guidance.
With the moon and Leo and all the stuff that's going on, you know what the first thing clean up came to mind was my makeup and all my cosmetics.
I love that. I wiped down an entire palette yesterday because I didn't like the smudges. You know what I mean? So I know what you're saying. Yeah. I think that kind of stuff, you know, there's something about that yummy, how we tend to ourselves. And then, because I love Virgo, the hygiene of it.
Exactly.
I love throwing away old makeup. I love not keeping stuff that's cruddy. I love not passing it on. I love letting it go.
Also, cleaning your makeup brushes is extremely satisfying.
Yes.
Yeah. Watching all that gross stuff come out of there and then how beautiful they are after. Love it.
I've been painting this week, and it's so funny that you say that because I built the entire studio around a utility sink. If the tools aren't clean, there's no point.
Exactly. Yeah. So that to me, with the strong Venus and Virgo energy all month and all that stuff that week, yeah, I'm like, oh, I'm going to totally redesign that part of my bathroom is what's going to happen.
I love that.
So overall, interesting week. And I would love at the end of this week for people to let us know if what came up, like what kind of experiences did you have? Right? Because it is a really interesting, up until now for July, it's been a fascinating time. So please, in the comments, weigh in.
To kind of put it in buckets, did you experience frustrations? Did they point to anything? Did you experience cool stuff? Was there any underlying stuff? Were you able to get rid of stuff? Did you meet resistance? Those are the kinds of things I'd be curious about, but also any experiences y'all had.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially for me, stuff around, like, did it feel like a pressure valve released in any way? Nice. I'd be curious to know about that for sure. I know for me, just knowing how this is, you know, we've said earlier in earlier videos, if you have stuff between 3 and 5 degrees, and it really, you know, you had brought up the mutable signs, Pisces, Virgo, Gemini, Sag, but it doesn't matter because we have an outer in each mode.
Yeah.
So if you have anything at 3 to 5 degrees, this is a big month. And so I feel like anybody who has those placements this week is the pressure release of everything that's built with those outer planets moving into those signs. So yeah, we'd love to know what people experience this week.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you brought that up. That's really good. And then, you know, we move into another week that we'll get to with you guys shortly. And there are some doozies, aren't there?
Yeah, the next 2 weeks of July have some pretty wild astrology. And I don't want to freak anybody out because some of it's great, but there's some pretty wild astrology coming up.
It's sort of like the fireworks for the astrological community. It's nothing, you know, if you're not going to make it, you're not going to make it. If you make it, you make it. But this is going to be like, pow,
Yeah. Well, and I feel like, if you listen to astrologers that are regularly talking about the transits and what are going on or writing about or whatever, um, there hasn't been total agreement on the most pivotal month of the year or the
Right.
biggest transit, or there's disagreement on what's the most pivotal and most important. Um, and I haven't lined it all up to, but I have noticed that a lot of people said May was pivotal, but now I'm seeing other astrologers saying, no, 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 July is the month to watch.
So I
So,
have seen that people are saying, and I think we knew that the juice that was coming with the Jupiter and Leo was going to be significant, and
right.
the outer planets were going to be in the lower degrees, and that would affect everything right at the beginning when they're introducing themselves to Gemini in the summer.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
yeah, I think it does point to, what do they used to call that? Like a sea change.
Right.
You're not going to move it all at once. You're not going to whip stuff around. It's not a 3-point turn. There's something significant that needs to be moved about to create the kind of change we're looking for.
Yeah. 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 And I'm going to say that July feels to me like we've been putting everything in gear and sort of trying to figure out, right? And kind of maybe had some misstarts and, oh, got to go back and tweak it and do it. July is when we actually start seeing how the ship is going to turn, right?
Yeah,
Like what
right.
direction it's going to go in. That's how
Absolutely.
I feel July is setting us up.
I
And so
agree.
that's another reason why I'm like, I'm love to know what people are going through or your even observations of what's going on in
Yes,
the news and how that applies to what we've
absolutely.
said. Love to hear about it for sure.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely. All right. Well, we will see you next week. Thank you for being
Yeah.
here. Thank you,
Thanks
Lily.
for joining us. Yeah. See you next week.
All right. Ciao.
Bye.